And so today we are very lucky. We got two folks from APD who agreed to come, and I'm gonna ask everybody to go on mute so that we can hear the presentation. But we have two folks from APD that are going to talk to us about the APD's efforts in this area. And I have to say, you know, when the accident happened that killed the folks, and then folks have been reaching out, I reached out to APD. I shared with you, some of you, their response, and I was really impressed with the amount of work they are doing on this area, in this area. So I asked, and I know we advertised that it was going to be Deputy Chief Smathers, but we've had a little switch over in staffing at APD. And so we're going to hear from Deputy Chief Josh Brown and Commander Benita Martinez today to talk us through what APD is doing. And so we're going to turn it over to the two of them, let them have a few minutes to go over what they're doing, what the plans are, and then we will come back to the group for questions after they're finished. So thank you so much to both of you for being here. We're going to turn it over to you.
Good morning, everybody. So my name is Josh Brown. I'm the Deputy Chief over the Special Operations Bureau, so which also includes their motor and DWI section. First, I'd like to say to Miss Paula Mills, my condolences to your loss. I mean, there's nothing I can say on this meeting that would ever take away that pain or anything else that I couldn't imagine. And to Miss Shapita, myself, I have a 16-year-old daughter who's started driving. And so I understand your trepidation and your terror. So my daughter leaves every morning for school, and I tell her every morning, like, just be careful. I love you, and you know, drive. I track her on her phone, how fast she's going, and I can watch what she does, but it's hard to, you know, control everybody else. So I understand the fears in that when I have, you know, teenage drivers of my own that are hitting the streets and kind of going out into that unknown. Kind of like Councilor Fiebelkorn said, so I just took over the Special Operations Bureau this week. My previous stint was I did the last 2.5 years as the Field Services Deputy Chief. So I oversaw all 7 area commands, and you know, our issue with drag racing isn't just specific to one area, it's citywide. And we've really seen since the onset of the pandemic, and it really, you know, we've always said, you know, when I was a rookie cop back, you know, 20 some years ago, you know, it was always on I'm good, thank you. It was always on the Montgomery corridor. Everybody focused on the racing on Montgomery. And you know, when I took over as deputy chief, like, we had hardly any tickets, and if you looked across the board, we didn't have vehicles that had, you know, police vehicles that didn't have radar units in them. So one of the things that I first did when I took over as deputy chief is I made sure that all new police vehicles that are issued to the field have radars in them, so that, you know, every police car out there should have a radar, so when they're not out taking calls for service, they can actually pull people over for speeding. Pretty common sense, huh? And so we got that changed, and, you know, through the work of our traffic unit and DWI and some of the enforcement efforts they've done, you know, it's telling on the numbers that they put up. I mean, when I took over as deputy chief and when Chief Medina took over as chief, there was about 24,000 traffic tickets a year by APD. This year we'll hit almost 80,000. This year to date, we're already probably a third over what we did last year. The commitment to grow the motor unit is there within the department. As we get more staffing, more resources will go to that unit, to include, you know, motor officers, DWI officers. We do have 2 shifts of motor units, where back in the olden days it was, you know, they worked day shift and they went home. We actually have a unit that works swing shift now, so it's on some of those hours where we have a lot of the higher call volume, or, you know, those people are out there doing the racing stuff. To include our DWI unit on top of that, who works those same hours. And here in a bit, I'll let Commander Martinez kind of fill you in on what their efforts have been and some of the successes they've had. And I know a lot of the stems around the issues of the loud mufflers. And, you know, even if they're sitting there going 20 miles an hour, it still sounds like they're, you know, going 120. And so, you know, one of the things that we looked at was you know, we have automated speed enforcement. We looked at like an automated noise enforcement that we could institute. And Deputy Chief Smathers had done a lot of research, and the motor unit had done a lot of research on that. And so far, there's really nothing out there yet. Technology hasn't really, it can do it. It just hasn't caught up to how we can enforce individuals. So like if there's two cars side by side, it can't differentiate between which car is the loud one or which car is not. And which means we can't just cite people in because we think they're loud. Like we have to verify and make sure like which vehicle is the one making the noise. So that's still kind of in its infancy in that technology stage, but that's not something that we're moving to right now just because there's no way for us to differentiate that and make sure that we're actually citing the people that need to get cited and not just the offenders. So we don't want to, violate somebody's constitutional rights or, and burden somebody with a ticket that they didn't deserve or didn't earn. I know from my time in the Field Services Bureau that we took a lot of complaints across the entire city. And one of the things that we looked at was how do we best utilize our motor unit to go out there and coordinate with other departments, not just our own, to include state police, Bernalillo County sheriffs, and working together to kind of combat some of that. Kind of put it in perspective, we're at 72, and Commander Martinez can correct me anytime that I'm off on any of these numbers, but like we're up to 72 fatal accidents this year. That's a lot. I mean, a lot of those are pedestrian fatals, probably almost half. So our motor unit does a lot with fatals. Well, a lot of those are attributable to speed and aggressive driving. One of the things that we have now is an aggressive driving unit that takes in complaints. We have a lot of hit and runs. Just to kind of put it in perspective, we have let's see. Sorry, I had a couple things open on my computer. Hold on one second. So, we had 717 cases sent to the hit and run unit just this year alone. A lot of those are attributable to people, exceeding the speed limit, run into somebody, and then take off. They hit property, they damage, people's private property, other vehicles. We had, out of those, we cleared by arrest or summons like 66 of those. There's 3,700 citations issued for those. And I mean, that's a ton if you think about it, just on the hit and runs that come in where people call and report. And then we have officers that are dedicated to finding out, who was driving that vehicle. We get a lot of, the excuses of, oh, well, I had loaned it to so-and-so. Well, shouldn't have loaned it to so-and-so because you're getting a ticket for it. Or now you have to get someone in the court and prove that, you're not the one that was driving that. But like I said, I've been in this position now for about 5 days, and I not only have the motor unit, but the air support, the whole tactical section, Homeland Security, and everything else. So I'm getting up to speed on everything that these units are up to. I already worked well with Commander Martinez in the past because a lot of the stuff that they're doing touched on the area commands. The things that were issues within an area command, no matter which area command it was, is now an issue with, and always has been, the racing issue of it. And so with that, I'll turn it over to Commander Martinez, who can kind of fill you in on what those operations look like, what enforcement actions they've taken, and kind of steps moving forward on what we're doing. But I will ask this. So if you have an open conduit to Councilor Fiebelkorn, I know she fields a lot of questions. She calls me, I call her back. Doesn't matter what time it is. I think I called her like 8 o'clock the other night. Sorry, apologize. This is when I got back to calling her back. But like part of this job and the position that I'm in is you answer the phone and you come up with solutions. So please keep those calls coming into 311, your counselor. And, if we don't know where that problem's occurring, then we can't put the resources there. So with that, I'll turn it over to Commander Martinez, and he can kind of fill you in on the racing operations they've been doing.
Good morning, everybody. Can everybody hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, just making sure. Sometimes I have problems with my computer. Again, Mrs. Mills, I want to reiterate DC Brown's condolences. You have my deepest condolences. I can't even imagine. I'm just here with you guys' introductions. Gave me light to of lot of other areas to where we can kind of focus some of our activity now. We kind of have a set plan of where we have that we operate and that are our biggest problem areas. But just getting this information from you guys attending this meeting is going to help our efforts as well. So hopefully we can cut down on more of the loud noise with the muffler things. It's been a while since we've done a muffler operation, so it sounds like we need to do another one here shortly. So I appreciate getting that information from you guys as well. So to touch on the racing topic of why we're here, a couple weeks ago we sent Councilor Fiebelkorn a kind of how we break down our operations and how we go. Since then, we've done a little more work, so our numbers have changed a little bit. So I'll dive right into that. As DC Brown stated, we have a nighttime swing shift motor unit along with our DWI unit who facilitate a racing tack plant every Friday and Saturday night. This operation usually is run by about 10 officers at the most and probably 7 at the least. We have our 4 motor guys that are supplemented by individuals working overtime. We have a PSA attached to them to tow vehicles. And we also try and get a DWI officer in there as well in case we run into somebody who is under the influence, and we can perform a DWI investigation right there on the spot and take them to jail. So on that, this year we've conducted 57 operations since the beginning of the year. Within those operations, we've issued 1,226 citations. We've responded to 129 calls for service. And these calls for service that they're responding to during these activations are the ones that come into where there are some drag racing, loud mufflers, people racing in the area. So they're calls that are designed for this tack plant operation to address and handle. And they're citywide, so sometimes it takes us a while to get there. We're unable to catch the individuals in the act, and sometimes it works to our favor to where these calls are just down the street of where these officers are and they can handle them and we can issue citations. And on these operations, we've had 7 DWI arrests. We've had 8 additional other arrests in there, being that misdemeanor warrant, the felony warrant. We also had an arrest in there for someone possessing an illegal firearm and being under the age of even owning a firearm. So there are other factors that go along with these street racing operations that we are hopefully curbing other criminal activities while we're making contact with these individuals. We've towed 27 vehicles from these operations, and these tows stem from different things. A lot of times they'll show up and they'll have drag racing tires on the vehicle, which are not DOT approved to be on the streets. So therefore we'll tow their vehicle and they'll have to pay to get that out of tow. We've issued 4 actual drag racing citations. Most of these drag racing citations that are issued off of what we call like an ad hoc street race. Like we're just traveling on the road, 2 vehicles are on the same road, and at that time they decide to race and they take off. We turn on emergency equipment and they either pull over or one pulls over, and we've issued citations. A majority of our citations on these operations are for spectating these events. It's under the same statute as drag racing. It's a subsection within there that we use. And this ultimately for us is if there wasn't a big crowd watching, condoning this type of activity, we don't believe there would be as many drag racing events as there are. So we cite the people that are in the crowd watching them, and we've issued 652 of those citations. So there's a lot of people who attend these that are, I guess, condoning this activity and promoting it and helping it be a success. And then from the total of the 1,226 citations, we've issued 574 other violations, whether it's window tint, registration, insurance. There's a number of other violations that go along with these events that we come into. We usually start these operations around 9 at night. We'll meet up A lot of times, as DC Brown stated, a lot of the complaints come in for the Montgomery corridor. So we focus a lot of our emphasis on there till about 11 o'clock at night. Once 11 hits, we have a set specific areas that we know where we've made these interactions with these individuals and issued citations. We have a list of those. I will go over those. Astic and Girard, Office and Singer, Jefferson and Hawkins, Eubank and Southern, Alexander and Mission, the Mesa del Sol area that's down south by the amphitheater down there. We've been noticing that's another one that's kind of starting to pick up since we've been hitting them hard in the city. So now we're having to patrol out there and monitor out there as well. The Double Eagle Airport area out there by the city shooting range is another hotspot for them. We try and double up with BCSO to help us out there in the rural areas like that to monitor, and if they need us, they can call us and we can go out there and help them out. The way we've come up with these actual areas is we've been able to kind of not really contact them, but monitor them on social media. They have their little feeds, and we have ways that we can kind of see what they're doing and see what the chatter is to where they might be, to where we can go and make contact with them and hopefully stop these events before they even happen. My take, I mean, we issue a lot of citations, and it kind of depends how you look at it. It's either really good or really bad. I think if we issued less citations, I think it would help us look like we're doing a better job of curbing all the drag racing stuff by minimizing these events. So hopefully, now that I have your guys' other input on areas to check, we can do a better job of doing all of that. With that, I think that's pretty much what I have, unless DC Brown would like me to touch on to something else, or we could possibly get into maybe some questions.
Thank you so much. DC Brown, did you have anything to add before we go to Q&A?
Sure. Just, I mean, so when we do these, we try to do them in conjunction with our air support unit, because 9 times out of 10, if somebody's driving like that, they flee. And, you know, everybody always wants to know, well, why can't you catch them? Well, one of the reasons we can't catch them is because it doesn't meet our pursuit policy for traffic offenses. And part of that is, you know, it has to meet like a violent crime, and whether just kind of goes into what our policy is. And it kind of makes it tough sometimes, because like you want to be able to chase these people, but it like at what cost? Is it, you know, lights and sirens? One of the most dangerous things that a police officer can do is run code and lights and full sirens, code 3. And a pursuit is terrifying, because, you know, that person's going to run stoplights. They're going to run at a high speed, and which makes it really tough for the officers to catch them. So we'd like to do this in conjunction with the air support unit. When we put out some pretty good video of some of these guys that are, you know, they're just flying. You know, you got a Dodge Hellcat going 150 miles an hour, and the helicopter has a hard time actually keeping up with some of these vehicles, which is crazy. But they hit the freeway, and man, they give them a run for their money. And so, you know, we try to use that as a kind of a force multiplier to make sure that, one, we can track them, because they'll slow down eventually. They'll stop. We'll figure out where they live, and then we'll go and arrest them if they're driving like that. One of the things I would like to point out, though, too, is, you know, we used to do a seizure program, which we don't do anymore. It's against state statute. And one of the things that was on that was, you know, I just got back from Oklahoma, and what they do is they seize vehicles that are involved in racing through a forfeiture program. We don't really do that here in New Mexico because it was deemed unconstitutional. But, you know, that's just one of those things that, you know, if we look back and look at history, like those that fail to study history are deemed to repeat it, kind of a deal. And one of the things that we don't want to do is, you know, unknowingly take people's transportation away. But if you're putting lives in danger, you know, something that's out there in other states. But, you know, one thing I want to touch last on what Commander Martinez said is, you know, monitoring some of these social media feeds. And I think you'll see, you know, some of those groups will say, hey, you know, we will hit them hard for a week or two, and then on their social media feeds, like, hey, let's not race this weekend because APD's out and they're going to snag us up. And it's actually been pretty effective. And so when we see like that behavior change on those social media feeds where they're talking about it, plus, you know, if you run and we spike filter your car, some of these cars have, you know, $2,000 to replace some of these tires on some of these race cars. It's a huge monetary, you know, chunk for them. And, you know, plus if they try to keep going on those wheels, it's another, you know, could be $5,000-6,000. And so it's a big hit for them. They don't want to damage their pride and joy. They don't want to damage them. They don't want us to tow them. And if we catch you drag racing, we're going to tow your car. And that really pisses them off because they don't want to get their little baby towed. So, which that makes me happy to tow those cars. So, but with that, I'd like turn it over back to Councilor Fiebelkorn and just open up for questions.
Okay, I want to thank you both for all that information. I saw people scribbling notes furiously, so I think you've given us a lot of new information. I'm going to ask if you have a question to please use the raise your hand function. There's just a lot of us on here and I don't want to miss anyone. So to raise your hand, just go to the bottom of the app and look for reactions. And if you click on reactions, you can raise your hand from there. And we can ask questions directly of the experts. And while folks are figuring out how to do that, we got one already. There we go. Cheryl, go ahead.
Okay, it's hard for me to get my phone to unmute. So someone commented on the long straight streets. I appreciate our long straight streets. The lights are synchronized and you can pretty much go the speed limit and hit the lights green and not have a lot of stop and go. And I just kind of enjoy, you know, going down the street at 30 or 35 miles an hour. And I would hate to see that go away because people abuse. The synchronized signals are really nice if you're following the speed limit. I would hate to lose that as an effort to stop speeders. And also I wanted to comment that I'm really glad APS has given up on the high-speed chases. That was a really terrifying thing when that would go on. But so thanks for giving that up. But I do see that we have a problem here. I don't understand why people can't just behave. Okay, thanks for listening to me.
Thank you, Cheryl. I don't think there was a question in there, so I'm going to go straight to Patty. Go ahead, Patty. Nope, you're on mute, Patty.
Okay, I apologize for me being slow to unmute. Okay, so as I understand it, the consequences, that's kind of what I'm thinking about right now in terms of what happens if you do get caught drag racing or intense high speed. You know, you could have your car towed, as I understand it, if you have the wrong kind of tires on your vehicle. Is that the way it works? And then also, what are the traffic ticket consequences of this? I mean, you get a traffic ticket, you may or may not show up in court, or what happens? You know, I'm just concerned that, you know, this is pretty serious stuff that's happened and potentially could happen again and again. And I feel like we need to, you know, put some teeth into this and make it more of a big deal if you get caught drag racing.
Yes, ma'am. So the way the citation works, and like you said, yes, if your tires are not DOT certified, a lot of these race tires they have don't really have a strong sidewall, so you can't take turns with them, and it makes the vehicle very unsafe to drive. Once they're issued a citation, they are issued a court date. If they do not make that court date, the warrants issued for them for that citation for failure to appear in court. This citation does carry from $1 up to $400. We do our best to push for the $400 amount on these citations to hit them again, to let them know that it is a very serious offense. They can face jail time. A lot of that is up to the judge of how long and how much the monetary fine will be. But we try and push the $400 every time. And then if it's changed from there, there may be some mitigating circumstances or whatever, but to us, there's always an aggravating circumstance of somebody possibly losing their life with this type of activity.
Thank you. Bill.
Yeah, what would be the feasibility of establishing a run in a remote area that they could go do their drag racing without being, having consequences like they do.
Yes, sir. We do have a drag strip out in Montesa Park, south of the airport area. Lieutenant Patterson, before he left, he was working with them to try and set something up to help build a good working relationship with that, I guess, group to say, and the police officers by having, everybody go out to the drag race, give them like half off or maybe a free admission or something where they could do that safe environment. There's ambulance there. There's safety requirements for the vehicles. So that's being passed on to our new lieutenant who's over there now, Lawrence Monty. So, like I said, once he gets up and running and going from there, hopefully we can have something in effect to, like you're saying, to have them in a safe area to where it's actually legal to be doing.
Right. That's good.
Thank you. I didn't know about that. That's really good to hear. Ms. Mills?
Yes, am I muted or am I?
No, we can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, yeah, I would like to know how many cameras to catch speeders are on Montgomery now, and if there are any on Louisiana.
There are 2 cameras that are on Montgomery, one for eastbound and westbound. They're up in the Eubank area. I don't believe there are any on Louisiana now. We finally just got our total of 20 cameras set up so we can start our year trial period. And depending on the outcome of that, then we'll start implementing more cameras in the city on the different streets and side streets to hope curb speeding throughout the whole city.
You think, in your opinion, will that help if we have more cameras?
It does help, just since we've
Yes.
had the cameras, the speeds that we were seeing at the very beginning until now have went down, but there still are people speeding. So it hasn't totally curbed the problem, but the speeds have come down.
And how much does a speeding camera cost the city?
I'm not sure on that. It's a contract thing, and I believe they're on lease, and there's a lot of stuff that goes into it. I don't have an exact amount, but the speeding ticket is $100 that the individual is issued.
And then how many speeding tickets do you have to get before your license is revoked?
It's depending on the type of citation that you get. Each citation is a different amount of points. You have 12 points on your driver's license, so it could be 2 citations, could be 1 citation. It just depends on the violation, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ms. Mills. Mr. Eldridge?
I was going to thank the officers for coming today. It's been really informative for me, so I appreciate it. I was wondering about is the problem with the monitoring the sound, the decibel technology, is the problem? I think the technology exists. Is the problem the expense of the technology? I wasn't quite sure about that answer. And I had another question too, but maybe you could field that question first.
Sure. So it's not the technology itself. The technology to monitor the decibels is there to tell you how loud something is. The problem is if there's one car, it's easy. If they're in a group of cars or they're in traffic, it won't differentiate between which car is making that sound. And so kind of like it would just say, yeah, there's loud noises there, but we can't, like we have to go off what's called probable cause to make an arrest or citation.
Right.
And we wouldn't be able to say, yeah, it's the blue car, whatever, because, if we cite the wrong person into court, or we cite we're essentially violating somebody's constitutional rights by doing that. And that's one of the things that we don't want to do ever. We're already under consent decree with the Department of Justice, and we're doing really, really well. And I don't want to add another factor that we can't control, and that's one of them. So the technology is there, the technology is sound. It's just that technology can't pinpoint. So until they come up with, I think there's ways that if you look at artificial intelligence coming up now, it might be able to, but right now it won't tell us which car it is. So if I have a group of 5 cars and one of them's just raising hell and louder than heck, cool, but it won't point out which one it is. And if it's 10 o'clock at night and they're all kind of cool, fast looking hot rods, could be any of them. And that we can't just cite willy-nilly into court just because we think it was you. We have to be positive. So yeah,
the reason why I raised this issue is that I can be in my neighborhood. Again, this is the area, you know, around Summit Park. And there'll be a lone individual driving a very loud vehicle, but not speeding. And I think that contributes to, I mean, I understand about speeding and the kind of noise that's created by that. And I think you acknowledged it as well, but it seems to me a lone patrol car just driving through a neighborhood behind one of these vehicles would be able to immediately see that's the only vehicle other than the police vehicle on the road in that area, and would be able to enforce it. I mean, I think everything about this conversation, you know, we're trying to approach solving the problems as citizens, but also in terms of helping you, but also, you know, hearing about the challenges you have. Like you said, you don't want to violate people's rights, which is great. My second question is that could you summarize very quickly what we as citizens can do? I heard some discussion about calling 311 if we do hear that, but my understanding is that call center is not a 24/7 operation. And I think we are the eyes and in this case, ears of your citizenry. And it seems like you use these data points as intelligence as to where, you know, problems are occurring. Of course, you know, if you just listen around the city, you see something start at 15 seconds at one place and it's in another quadrant of the city in terms of your listening. But nevertheless, we could give you some intelligence. What can we do as citizens to help the police, you know, enforce the law?
So it's like you're saying 311, I don't believe is a 24-hour system. You can also call our non-emergency number, 242 cops,
Right.
and let them know what you're experiencing. If it's a loud muffler, possible drag racing, something of that nature, and they'll create a call. And then if it's on a Friday or Saturday night, and hopefully as DC Brown touched on, they want to expand our late night people. If we can get another squad to work a Sunday night, then we'll have full coverage 7 days of a week to hopefully address these issues that we're having. But it generates a call for service for us. And then off of that data, we can have our RTCC do research and kind of accumulate where these problems are, the biggest areas, and help us direct our forces to where we need to be to help enforce these actions.
Okay, thank you very much.
Sure. And I thought, Elizabeth, you had your hand up. Did you have a question? Elizabeth Johns? Yeah.
I had basically the same question that Mr. Eldridge just posed.
Okay.
You know,
Great.
it's very helpful to hear what the police are doing now, but there's still a problem now as well. And if there's something that we in the neighborhoods can do to assist them, it would be good to know about that.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear the question.
It was basically John's question repeated, which is what, you know, these folks on this call really want to help you guys, and they want to know the best ways to do that. And I think what I heard was we should all be reporting racing, loud mufflers, anything that we see, we should be reporting so that you guys have that data point. Is that the best thing to do?
That's valid.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Esther.
Yes. Excuse me. I also live back east, and a lot of cities do make the use of roundabouts to control speed in their cities. Has there been any thought? I know you can't put roundabouts every block or so, but in your major areas where you know there's speeding going on, would that be possible?
That obviously takes a lot more research and development to do. So a lot of that lies on traffic engineering. Once we see an area that possibly has a problem that is hopefully not a major thoroughfare, but if they're a major thoroughfare, there's a lot more engineering that has to go into it for emergency vehicle response, just depending on time of day, traffic flow for the rush hours that come into it. So that unfortunately, I can't answer that question 100%. That's something that traffic engineering would have to look at, and they would probably have a better answer for you.
And Esther, I can just add in, because we have had that conversation with our traffic engineers on a couple of projects, and just two things to know. The way we are built up, most of the property along our major roads have serious right-of-way issues that we would have to deal with to do large roundabouts, which would make it very difficult. And I will just say, even small roundabouts in neighborhoods are not liked in Albuquerque. And so that is a much bigger request and a much bigger project than I personally think it should be, but I do agree with you that it's a good idea. Okay, I want to make sure that folks that haven't spoken get a chance. So if there's anybody that didn't figure out how to raise their hand, please just come off mute and speak. I want to make sure everybody got a chance.
So I may have missed it, but if we see someone speeding and by chance we get that license number, do we call 311 or who do we call with that license number? And what yeah, I guess I know what happens. So who do we call?
For just to report somebody speeding who like speeds past you on a road or
Well,
something like
I'm
that?
talking about the guys who go in and out. Sometimes I've been on, actually it's been on, I think it was Manal, where a car they're driving fast. It happened 2 days ago. They were probably late for work and they went right in front of my car. It's a wonder I didn't hit them. Went into another car. And there was a chance I could have gotten the license number. I was so shocked I didn't. But what happens what do I do with that license number?
Okay, so if you do get that license plate number, you're going to report that to either our hit and run unit, and you'll write like a little synopsis of what happened. You'll leave your information so they can contact you. And then also the aggressive driving unit has an email address as well. I believe that's on the city website, abq.com or .gov, sorry. And make sure you leave your information on there so they can get a hold of that individual. Being that this is just a misdemeanor offense, a lot of times the best thing or biggest thing that we can do is call that individual and have a conversation with them, let them know that they're on our radar. We add that license plate into our CAD system after we get the report from you and we make contact with them. And then now that's in our system to where if we have any other violations or offenses, then for lack of better words, we can kind of start stacking those incidents with that license plate and then ultimately hold that registered owner accountable for their actions.
Thank you, Commander. Okay, I don't see any other hand. Esther, you didn't have another question, did you?
No, but on the calls, if you do get a license, can we also call 242 cops?
Yes, you can, and let them know that what was going on, and that also puts that license plate into our system. We can put be on the lookout for that vehicle with the officers who are working that day in that area, and it helps us contact that driver as well.
We also have a Albuquerque Police Department evidence submission portal where you can report road rage and aggressive driving. And what you do is you can upload actual videos, like if you video them with your phone, if it's in your neighborhood and you have your cell phone and you snap, take a video of them driving, you can actually upload that directly into the Albuquerque PD. It's the website is Albuquerque PD NM .evidence.com. And you can update videos, whatever else, and that covers both road rage and aggressive driving. So that's another avenue as well.
Did everybody get that? Josh, would you mind like typing that into the chat so folks can copy and paste if they didn't get it when you said it out loud?
Yeah, 1 second.
All right, I'm not seeing any questions. We are at 11:01. Yes. I do know.
I have a question.
Oh, yeah, Roy, go ahead.
Yes, using Mr. Regals as my guide when it comes down to the city council, we had started having quarterly meetings for the community at the recreation centers so we can communicate with each other in person and then come to some kind of conclusion as to how the city should go about youth and other parts of the programs that surround this city. And I think that would be very helpful if the schools are instrumental in educating the kids on what's around them with violence and other things. And I'm still new at this, so don't quote me on it. Just take it as I'm watching and I'm trying to learn and understand. The police would come out to the community center right there off of Manal Ellison, and we would talk in other parts of that area over in District 5. We would talk, and everybody would get involved, and we got direct input from the police and the city council and other departments of government. So if we can exercise that, Mr. Lewis is not doing that. And that's reason I'm so down on the city council right now, because our judicial system here is very, very weak when it comes to charges. It's for the police officers. I don't know if they agree, but I think anytime a person is caught speeding, the car should be at least impound for 30 to 60 days, depending on the violation itself and how many they've got against them. And in Maryland, they take your cars immediately on the side of the road. I've heard arguments where the community would say, oh, I wasn't driving, but it was my car. Hey, you're responsible for your vehicle. It's like me walking out the door. If I don't stop for the speed bump and the van run over me, I should have thought first. So
Yeah.
you guys, I appreciate your interest. I like to see this city improve. I think these guys can do the job, but it takes a community. Don't just blame it on the police, because these guys are out there. All this vandalism with the stores having to close because of vandalism. I see the police working hard. Hey guys, I walk a very thin line between the law and order, the good and the bad. I've been there. I know what it's like. The shooting coming to Albuquerque was like going to Washington, D.C. when I was 16 years old. So I'm not against you guys. I might be the one in the wrong. I don't know. But hey, if we can get those communities to work with you, then you have the extra forces that can help you to manipulate this problem compared to being manipulated. Okay?
All right, thanks, Roy. I'm gonna close this down because it's after 11. I do want to do two things before we head out. And if you have to jump off, because I know some of you are at work and took an hour off, this is recorded, we'll post it so you can see the end. But if I just wanted to ask both the deputy chief and the commander, what do you need from both like city council and from the state legislature? What would be your number one ask to help solve the issues that we've been talking about today, which are racing and noise on the streets?
You know, I mean, I really appreciate that question, because, you know, we're actually very well supported by our city council. We're fully funded for what we're staffed for. I think the biggest thing that we can ask for is legislative change, as far as you know, what the penalties are, what the rules and regulations are on drag racing. I mean, we put it out there and we hammer them, and sometimes it changes behavior, and sometimes they get a slap on the wrist. So it just depends on what those are. So I think the biggest changes you can make, you know, talk to your legislators, and, you know, make it an issue with them. It's horrible to say, but, you know, a lot of times, unless it affects somebody personally, you know, a lot of people don't take it personal. They don't make it a priority. So if it's a priority for you, you make it a priority for your legislator, and really push for that. I think, like, this is not something that APE needs money thrown at. I mean, we do a good job. Chief Medina does a good job with the money part, and I know Councilor Fiebelkorn and council have been really supportive of everything we've asked for. So a lot of it comes down to your state legislation, like what's important to them, and then how do you get them to pass meaningful legislation that actually, you know, inhibits some of this. You know, what are the penalties for vehicular homicide? You know, what are the penalties for, you know, repeated drag racing? Do we have a forfeiture law? We don't. You know, that's something that's going to happen up at the Supreme Court level and up at the legislation. And just be loud, be heard, be vocal.
Thank you. So I quickly, you know, I know some of the folks have had to jump off, but of the folks on here, do you all know who your state representative and your state senator are? I'm seeing yeses. Have you reached out to them about this topic? Okay, so I'm just going to leave that out there. I will be reaching out. One of the things that I think we need to do, and this was after talking to Deputy Chief Smathers, and it sounded like Deputy Chief Brown agrees with this, is that the seizure rules need to be readdressed. Now, the old seizure rules were horrendous, in my opinion. They allowed local jurisdictions to seize property if you were charged with a crime, but not requiring that you be convicted. And I'm not for that. But I would like to see something that says that if you're charged with something like this, like street racing that's endangering the lives of others, that the car that was used in the commission of that crime could be seized. I think that would be huge because these folks love those cars. They're babies. And so seizing something that was used in the commission of a crime makes a lot of sense to me. So that's something I'm going to be reaching out to my legislator and my senator about. But, I just encourage you all to do the same because the reason I asked that question is I'm happy to do anything at the city level I can to support this, but I feel like that we've done what we can at the city. So let's start promoting this at the state level. Let's start pushing that. You should all be signed up for the District 7 newsletter. So I will include updates on this and potential legislation and all of those things in that newsletter. So watch that. Get to know your state senator, get to know your state representative. They are regular people just like all of us. Call them up, email them, let them know that this is important to our community. So,
And Council, just real quick, I actually emailed you that link. It actually, there wasn't a chat function on here for me to share it with the group. And
I'm
so
sorry about that. Let me
push that out and share with them.
let me get it, and I'm going to put it in the I'm going to put it in the next newsletter because we somehow don't have chat set up. I see, so I'll put it in the next newsletter so you can find that there. And with that, I just want to thank Commander Martinez. Thank you for all that information. That was really, really helpful. Deputy Chief Brown, thanks for this, but for everything else, you are my go-to person at APD, and I really appreciate your willingness to come and share an hour and 8 minutes with us and let us know what's happening. So thank you to everybody. And then you folks that are on, we will see you next month on the Zoom, and then check out the District 7 newsletter that comes out in 2 weeks. And then always reach out to my office if you have any questions. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye, everybody.